Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Date with the Archive. Uh, India Foundation for the Arts, as many of you know, is an independent not-for-profit that implements and supports projects in arts and culture in India. Over the last 29 years, we've supported close to 800 projects, the outcomes of which films, productions, performances, exhibitions, publications are out there in the public domain. In the last 5 years, we have wanted to share this work with many more members of audiences, artists, scholars, students um, who are interested in arts and culture. We have been building the IFA archive that now houses these 800 plus projects and their outcomes. We are very grateful to the Indorama Charitable Trust that has been helping build the IFA archive. And we currently house about 527 projects online, and you can visit the IFA archive at our physical space in Bangalore. Part of our endeavor to encourage conversations about the work we support, about artist journeys and how scholars engage with archives, as well as encourage conversations and exchanges with other archives, is our series of events that we organize. You can engage with the IFA archive through the podcast series, through the From the Stacks, and today's event, which is Date with the Archive. Before I hand it over to Vishwadeep to tell you a little bit more about today's event and the interesting presentation we have today, a few house rules. If you'd like to leave your comments and responses to the presentation, please do use the chat box. We will be taking questions after the presentation. So if you have questions for Rahi, who's our presenter today, please use the Q&A box. If you are viewing this on Facebook, where we're streaming live at the moment, leave your questions in the comment and my colleague will bring those questions for Rahi to the Zoom conversation here. So without further ado, over to Vishwadeep Chakrabarti, the archivist at the IFA archive, to tell you a little bit more about Date with the Archive. Vishwadeep?
Thank you, Menaka, and good evening, everyone. For our fifth talk of the series Date with the Archive, this evening we have with us Dr. Rahi Soren. Rahi is an assistant professor at the School of Oceanographic Studies, Jadavpur University. She is interested in understanding the effective use of scientific information for conserving culture, habitat, and biodiversity in the face of the growing threats of extinction. Alongside her scientific work, she engages with indigenous culture and actively participates in the documentation and preservation of the endangered cultural heritage. Today, Rahi will share her own experience in archiving indigenous culture, especially while generating Santali archives. After her presentation, Menaka and I will take audience questions. Now, I'd request Rahi to please take the stage.
Thank you so much, Menika and Vishwadeep. Thank you for inviting me here. And I look forward to engaging with the audience as well as experts from IFA as well. At the very onset, I would like to extend my gratitude, as I believe is of utmost essential. And at times we do forget to acknowledge our ancestors on whose shoulders basically we are standing. And without their intention of raising their voices and bringing forward this cultural heritage that we so proudly inherit, at times we take it for granted. So today we'll be looking at Indigenous archives and my own experience that I have had in dealing with it. How did I come into it? And perhaps try and find new avenues towards taking this work further. So I'll start my screen share here. It's visible, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Also, definitely, Jadavpur University has been forefront in encouraging me to continue this work in several ways. And I start by talking about archives, especially Santali archives, Indigenous archives, elsewhere in the world as well. Especially when we look at Indigenous understanding and the worldview that many a times we get to know about how other they are or how different they are, and something very weird or funny things, but it's us, so similar and dissimilar, and perhaps it's a time where we should assert uh, the plurality and the diversity that we have amongst us. So work has been going on really in a very wonderful way in many of us know in New Zealand, in Australia, paving the way for the Indigenous narratives to come forward and share as much as possible. In Canada as well, such initiatives have been done. And what I found really fascinating was the Santal archive that is present in the Oslo Museum and in which is in Norway. So basically, Christian missionaries who came in parts of Santal Pargana in Benegaria, people such as Paul Olaf Boding, missionaries such as Krefroot, they had started their journey to India in the 1800s, 1870, some came in 1890, and their first intention was definitely to uh, save the heathens. But nonetheless, they are the ones who had initiated documenting Santali culture and tried to learn the language, the culture, before converting them to Christianity and spreading their uh, voice and knowledge among the people as well. So if you explore the Santal collection, the archives there, uh, what has happened is just before independence, Paul Olaf Boding, who has almost 30,000 pages of manuscript, who had taken back with him in 1940s. And none of this was accessible to the people in India, Nepal, Bangladesh, the people who spoke Santali for that matter. So now a few handful of people who knew Santali were in Norway, were also dwindling because of age, as you know. So people didn't know what repository they had. So until very recently, as you can see, you can also explore the Santal Cultural Heritage web page, where they have digitized almost 90 to 95% of the artifacts, manuscripts, museum articles, and is now accessible online very widely. So, and you will see all kind of materials from folklores to riddles, and has been uploaded in the early, I guess, 2018 and 19 during that time. So, as you know, marginalized communities have very difficulty in having access to paper documents. And whereas Santali is concerned, you can see that the written form has existed only, say, around 100 years, a bit more, compared to other ethnic communities. So we will look into some of those documents and explore what's therein. So this is one a very interesting document, the manuscript, in fact, where Santali words were being collected by Scrayfruit, and this is the basis of material in which a 7-volume dictionary was published. This you can find it in the markets as well as of now. So this is still a one dictionary which is very much relevant, and it's one of a kind. No other dictionary Santhal English dictionary is such a large compendium. And it all started in the 1890s when the missionaries from Benekaria mission, which is in Jharkhand now, had started to collect these archives. So this is a copy of an agreement by the missionaries of that time, where how Santali needs to be written. So some of you might know that Santali is written in 5 scripts. So there are very less number of languages which are such diverse and politically challenging as well at times. So Kannada is such a language in India that I know of, which is also written in multiple scripts. So if you look at the political geographical location of the people living in the Santan speaking areas are in West Bengal, in Jharkhand, in Orissa, in Assam. So everyone has a different quote unquote state language. So how do they write their language? So it becomes a very challenging understanding of the same. And as you will see in my collection as well, you will find multiple scripts written in on by which it is written. So to look at the pronunciation of Santali in Roman scripts, you will notice different diacritics being used so as to accommodate the pronunciation of Santali, which is very unique as in Austroasiatic family in which it belongs to, because of its glottal in nature. I'll read out a piece in a bit. So this is the archive that I've started building, in 2021. And it looks at very fragile material. We started to look at material, that's why locating is present, and try to find out. So people have been living in very challenging situations, such as Naxalitic areas, mined areas. People were displaced a lot. So we found material which is, very much yellowed, printed in very cheap material. So the survivability of those materials was itself a challenge, though it is not yet 100 years of writing. So if you look at the website here, my colleague will also be sharing it there. You will find the collection. And these are my team members without whom I wouldn't have been able to complete this project. So here's Shitaram Bashke, who was responsible for the survey of the manuscripts. Here's Amritesh, he's expert in online digitization, and Shruto Kirti Dotto, who was responsible for data management and creating the metadata of the archive. Yeah, so the collection consists of 5 collections contributed by W. Soren, Rabun Chandra Bashke, Sushil Bashke, Mahadev Hasda, and Purno Chandra Soren. So they have been living in different parts of Orissa and West Bengal, have had to migrate a lot of times, and definitely without their dedication and passion for keeping the documents since the 1930s. And in fact, W. Soren, I have heard narrations of him stating how he used to go to different villages to try and find out old documents so as to preserve them himself. And we are very glad today to say that not only does W. Soren have this collection, but we can share it with the world the scholars who can look it up into the materials from the early times. So you will look at the website and you will find categorization of different collections, and this is how it is. We were talking about scripts, and you can see in the first place Chotraidish Majia Katha. So this is how Satali is written in Roman script. And in the very next place, you will see Hor Shambad. So Hor Shambad translates into Hor as in human, but we Santals call ourselves Hor, and Shambad, which was printed by the Bihar government of that time. And in the next, you can also see Pochim Bangla, Abhan, which is again written in Bangla script, in Eastern Brahmi script, which is people of West Bengal mostly used it. So just to give you a few samples of the materials that we found, Dharva is something which was published by the missionary in 1931, 1936. This is the collection that we have of that time. But even though the missionaries' intention was to spread their faith, it also teamed up as a colonial disposition, and the colonizers' idea, spreading the colonizers' idea among the indigenous people here. Some missionaries definitely were of the idea that it is important to document the people who they will be converting before trying to share their own faith. So if you see this page, I will read out what's written here. Kabli baria mutan minat takwa. Pahil mutan teko nyelo a. Tisre adi dularte kichri ko ema pekana. Ar doshar muthante tisre pashe jo latu thenga te ko hijua. Ar taka den chara param bako mela. Noa doshar muthun botor ge kon meloa. Masin jelate adi alga gya. So this was published in Dharva in one of the places, and I have translated the bit for most of our audiences here. So it's a trick question. Some of us have also seen this kind of a picture which is engaging to the reader and tries to look at the different faces of the Kabli. So the Kabli definitely has two faces, and one can also question what are those faces, and the colonial representation of the Kabliwala or the people from Afghanistan in a journal such as Dharva is one example that you see. Apart from this, such things such as this one, you will see like Nui gede chete meneda. So what is this duck saying? This is from Dharva again in 1934. So it's a moral story. In this month, after harvesting paddy, all Santals go to visit relatives. And why not the goslings? They would also go. We go to a relative's place where there is ample water. However, the children of the men or the Santals, or how I said Hor or Hopon, or especially during Shohrai, go somewhere where there is ample honey or the rice beer and spend 5 to 6 days swimming in honey. Some say the children of men drink and behave just like us during the festivals. Being a gaze, this is very shameful to us. We go straight to visit our relatives, stay very well, and come back well and good. However, Santals, not all, go to visit relatives as sane people, stay like street dogs, and come back as pigs. Honestly, we are distant relatives through Has-Hashi, but dogs, pigs, and drunken men are not related to us. That is all I have to say. So if you look at this text, like you will be able to understand the undertone behind it. One has also to understand what does it stand for a Santal person to be reading it. If you look at the creation myth, the Santal creation myth, they had been created through two eggs laid by Hash and Hashil. Hash and Hashil are the goose and the goose, I mean, the male and the female geese. And that is how they have been, man or Horhopon had been created, the human civilization has been created. So this text not only challenges the question of Santals as human beings, but also their belief and their faith and their representation in a written document, Christian missionary written documents such as this. Moving on here, you will also find documents such as Sheren Rar Chattier or the Rice Gruel song, which is documenting how exactly Chattier happens, or what are the rituals involved during Chattier or the initiation of the child, which has just born. This ceremony is basically practiced 3 to 4 months after the baby is born. Apart from that you will also find in the collection books such as Horgidra in it, or this documents almost 73 different children's games, and this date back to the early 40s. And as you can understand, the tradition itself has come orally from like much, much earlier, perhaps centuries. So some of these I have also played as a young person, and it's interesting how games have also been changing, and what does it imply in the psychology of a child and its development, and the categories of games according to age, gender, so on and so forth. So you will also find books such as Chandni and Jata Jhabhai, which is in the bottom. You can see Korako Lagi Lana Khilo, which translate roughly into it's play. It's a book of plays for girls and book of plays for boys. This was written and published in Dudhani in Dumka, and this collection was written for school children. Girls' school and boys' school were there side by side. So the principal of that school had written this, and every year these plays were enacted at that time. Yeah, also you will find narrations such as the Chotrai Deshmachi Katha, or this is Chotrai Deshmachi has been a person who has witnessed the Santal Hul or the Santal Rebellion of 1855. And mind you, it's before the Sepoy Mutiny, which is known as the First War of Independence, and tens and thousands of people were killed in this war. And Chotrai Deshmachi was a young person of 14, and he had to migrate to Assam. So later on, Chotrai Deshmaji's narration was documented by someone called Rahi Soren, who was also a missionary, went there and documented. This can actually be seen as the first oral documentation which has been written down of a rebellion, of Santal rebellion of 1855. So when he was narrating this story, he was around 85 at that time. So it gives you a lot of nuances in understanding what was that the colonial rulers had narrated in terms of the Santal insurgency, and what is it that the perspective of an indigenous person who stood against the revolution happened. You will also find books by a biography by A. Campbell, a renowned missionary of all that time. And Horsambad, as I told you, was published from government of Bihar, and it had definitely had a political agenda, but also it used to publish poems, riddles, songs, uh, so on and so forth from the community, written by the indigenous people as well. So uh, I'm at the end of my lecture here, so I'm very happy to share this page which hosts this collection, School of Cultural Texts and Records at Jadavpur University. Since the whole work was funded by British Council, so it is also found in the British Council and the British Library Archive, Endangered Archives program. Server is a bit low, as I know, so but hopefully they will look into it pretty fast. Before ending, I would like to get your attention into Indigenous Language Decade and why do we even needed such a declaration. As we know, like languages are in a pretty sad state now. We lose language as well as biological diversity. We are more concerned, a lot more, I guess, concerned about extinction of biological diversity. But if you look at the location of where we have high biological diversity, you will also find languages highly diverse in regions. And we have something called the biological hotspot, and India has a couple. And we also have called the language hotspot. And if you map them together, you will find a lot of coinciding places sustaining together, or rather existing and extincting together. So these archives would, I think, will able to make us look more about what is indigeneity and what has been our colonial discourse. And it's high time that we try and restructure and try and understand how can we work towards decolonizing our understanding of subjects in higher education, in the way we live. And definitely we cannot reject the presence of cultural hegemony that we face every single day. Also looking at knowledge and the power associated with it, as who controls knowledge, what is knowledge, do we actually give due to indigenous knowledge, and where does it, where do we place it in trans-border nations, in places where communities, small population, marginalized communities are more marginalized day by day. And if we do not have this knowledge, and definitely we are ushering in our own doom, I guess, really pretty fast. Well, but not trying to be very pessimistic about it. There are active initiatives all over the world which documents indigenous knowledge, and archiving indigenous knowledge is of utmost importance. And definitely without this knowledge that we already have, with each generation, we are trying to revive this as much as possible. And it's my earnest request to my knowledgeable uh, audience here to take this initiative themselves as much as possible, howsoever possible, to acknowledge this and perhaps contribute in their own way. So without giving acknowledgement to our contributors, my experience, my project will not be, you know, fair enough. So Mohadev Hansta is a very renowned collector, as well as he has been very kind to us, very generous, people from Baba Tilka Library, which is in Orissa. And they have openly and voluntarily shared their knowledge, which we are kind of bearers for that. And also my team at the School of Cultural Texts and Records at Jadavpur University, who has kindly hosted this. And hopefully in the near future, we will be able to continue working in this field and sharing knowledge with each other. Thank you. I'll end my talk here. I'll stop sharing. I would love to have questions and address them. Yeah, over to you, Bishwadip, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Rai, for such a wonderful presentation and enlightening us about so many things, about language, about culture, indigenous heritage. So I have a question for you, a quick question. After that, probably we'll start taking audience questions. How significant do you think these printed periodicals, which you digitized during the uh, during the span of your project, hold in the evolution from oral to written cultures in general, and the relationship between indigenous religion and also the play with the missionary and Christianity in general with the Santali culture? How do you think that these periodicals actually were significant in the evolution, oral to print?
Well, basically, yeah, these collections range from, I mean, are very diverse. So the first thing, such as how should a language be written, that is what you can find from the archive. As to, people had several meetings, and the minutes of the meetings are in the archives, where you have debate about how one diacritic should be used and not the other. And also, if you look at the content of the material, you will find it is very much culturally significant. Even you will also find things such as how the indigenous faith have been represented by the missionary faith. So at one point, researchers such as Timotheus Hemram has written in his article, that how the spirits or the bongas of the Santal tradition are compared with the Satan. And you can understand the representation and the agenda that's there. So this has been present in songs, in Santali hymns, in translation of Bibles that we can see, the early translation of the Bibles in Santali. So, well, some of these are come from the archive, but there are other places as well which are yet to be archived. But we know the presence of such materials. Yeah.
Thank you. Menaka?
Yeah, thank you, Rahi. I join Vishwadit and also audience members who are sharing their appreciation for your sharing. I think it really opened up, our access in terms of understanding the nuances and the complexities of the material that's out there. And it's not just the fact that the material is available, but like you're saying, the agenda, the political disposition in how they were archived and what stayed in these archives, what were taken and or what was translated, say, for example. So a lot of new. So I was just curious about in your research, and I know there are a lot of audience questions as well, things that perhaps didn't find their way into the archive, but perhaps exist, like you've said, in the library, exist in other spaces. Maybe if you can share with audiences what you might have encountered.
Yeah, I mean, one basic understanding when Santali scholars find it difficult, but because things are very scattered everywhere. So it's first of all, it's very difficult to get hold of written documents because as we speak, Santali culture itself is like mostly oral even now as we speak, right? So there are written documents, but there again are very dispersed. You can, in terms of archiving, you will find the large repository in Oslo libraries. You will also find it in University of Copenhagen in Denmark, where our scholar Peter works. There are a few places in the UK, in fact, Newcastle and East Anglia University, where they have small repositories of Santali material. And yeah, like places such as Baba Tilka Library, which is in Orissa, which is very, I mean, people from Orissa might have heard of it, but not so much. So there's this also difficulty when you are divided into different states. So like I never grew up learning Santali. I never had that opportunity, right? In whatever script that is. And I had learned Bangla, English, Hindi. So someone who is from Odisha or from Jharkhand would have learned their own state languages, but not Santali again. So communication between same community members also becomes a practical challenge at times. But still now, since it is a small community, some people argue that linguistically we are starting to be apart. But there's a debate upon that as well. But we do have Bangla accents who talk while talking Santali from people from Bengal, and people from Orissa having Oriya accents and such. And not only just accents, people who had been, say, forcedly driven away to North Bengal or in Assam have evolved in terms of songs. So I had also worked on Santal songs archiving earlier in another project. So I'm still looking into it, but the tunes, there might be festivals which are similar, but the new tunes evolve, and it's bound to evolve and have had influences of its surroundings. So it's fascinating to try and look into that. Yeah.
No, and you know what was interesting, Rahi, while you were reading the text, right? And we were listening to the cadence of how you were reading it. And I know before this conversation, we also talked about audio access that you have, audio files that you have. So it would be very interesting, maybe at at some point share with audiences where they can access these audio archives that you were talking about, the ones that you worked with as well. Because I think while transmission of knowledge, yes, happens through the written, it's also the nuances of how it is spoken that, how do we capture that in an archive as well? How do we capture those nuances? So do share when we have a moment those, the audio project that you were working on as well.
Definitely, I'll share it.
Yeah. So we'll go right, and there are a lot of questions. So I'll take Khurshid's question first. Because he's talking about challenges, which you addressed a little bit about the fact that archives were scattered, but he's asking, can you talk a little bit about the challenges in accessing these various collections and archives?
Yeah, so so one is a very practical physical challenge where when you go to villages, you don't really have a place to live in. So you have to put up in people's houses if they are willing to. That is one practical challenge. But apart from that, definitely you have to have a quotient of trust. I mean, anyone who is working in archiving would agree that without trust, why would anyone who has been, keeping their material very close to their heart in rains and floods, in earthquakes, for like 30, 40 years, would suddenly agree to give you their material for everyone in the world to see? So why would they do that? So it takes a lot of understanding, a faith, uh, and to make the people perhaps understand with the importance of archiving and the importance of these documents that they are holding on to. So for me, basically, I started out with people who I already knew, and collectors, uh, and for some places, well, definitely I'll confess here that we had reached out to many people, people who knew beforehand, people we didn't, but there are people who have not trusted us. So there are people who have not given us their material because we couldn't build that trust. So that's a very important part, and we are still working towards it. But financial challenges are definitely there again, because we have had words from people in Dumka and Ranchi. We have visited their place. We said that we will be archiving it, but because of financial reasons, we have not been able to do that yet. So these are a few challenges. But yeah, I think the more people take it up, it will be less challenging, and the awareness will be built as is to, yeah, the importance of archiving. Yeah.
Right. I'll take a question from Facebook by Nathaniel Nampui Major. So Nathaniel is asking, thank you, Rahi, for your presentation. Were there books written by indigenous Santals in the late 1800s, early 1900s? Just curious.
No, not books. Because we didn't have the means of access to alphabets. People haven't started writing yet in the early 1800s. But there are collections by missionaries, and this was not in early 1800s, but in the late 1800s, where the missionaries established schools where indigenous people as well as their children also used to go there, and started learning English as well as Santali, and uh, there were uh, writers, as in, like, someone dictated it, or someone is, say, narrating a story. And so you will also find collections of stories where the orally transmitted stories are being written down uh, by someone who is has doesn't know how to read and write, to by some indigenous person who has learned to read and write. And this whole compilation, well, again, interestingly, is been published not by the name of the indigenous people involved, but the missionaries who are publishing it, from Benegadia Mission Press. So there was this press in Benegadia, which was the first press, Santali press, where many materials were published. So we have also evidences of materials from, or publishing missionaries from Bangladesh, now Bangladesh, would come down and publish here and then distribute it there. Yeah.
So I think you referenced some writing about protest and rebellion. So Aditi Krishna Kumar is asking for the context of that. So if you could just explain the historical context as what the Santals were rebelling against.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for the question. Um, well, Santals were rebelling against landlords, zamindars, and the colonial masters of that time. So it was 1855, and if you look at geographically speaking. So places like Rajmahal Hills in West Bengal, in Santal Parganas. Well, at that time it was not yet Santal Pargana. So it was a place called Daminiko. So it was a Chotanagpur area, which extends from the upper portion of Eastern Ghats to West Bengal. So this large area was mostly inhabited by Paharia tribes, and it was mostly forested area. So the Permanent Settlement Act has not yet been that much implemented in these areas. But there again, as you know, the taxation was an issue by the then colonizers at that time. So what happened was these forest lands were cleared. People were taken up from different places and told the forest to be cleared and started to do agriculture. So initially there was no taxation, but as time went by, so they were exploited and a lot of taxation was present. So the initial complaint was against this taxation, and people didn't actually, they were very unpleased about the situation at that time. So Santhal rebellion was something in 1855 that happened. It happened for almost 9-10 months. So before that as well, there were unrests. We get documents which states about unrest. Even you can look up the London Illustrated Weekly, which used to come out at that time. You can also find it online, and you will have. So Santal rebellion was basically against the zamindars, the taxers, basically the colonizers. And why is it worth mentioning is because in 1855 there were more than 1 lakh people marching to Calcutta at that time. So the people, I mean, it's debated that is it a peasant revolution, it was just an outbreak, not much did it happened. But you can also look up two very important books that had come up in the recent times. One is called Hool by Peter Stanley, which has looked into the arms involvement of the British Empire of that time, and saw how much arms and ammunitions were actually artillery that was used. So there were hundreds of elephants employed, and tens and thousands of Santals died in that rebellion of 1855. So though in the London Illustrated News Weekly of like in 1856, we find references as it was just a outbreak, nothing much to it, but it is debatable. And you will find another book by, just a minute, I forgot the name of the book. It's yeah, actually, you can text me and I can send you the links to the books. The Peter Stanley's book basically was published in 2023 January itself. So yeah, it's very recent. And there's Daniel Rycroft's book on Hooligan. He's a professor at University of East Anglia. You will also find narrations from indigenous scholars such as Chotrai Deshmaji himself, and narrations from later ones, not in 1850 as such, but later ones. What is also interesting, how has Hool as an event, like impacted the psyche or the consciousness of the Santals, because every day there are Hul songs now as we speak, and Hul as a resistance has survived, uh, quite a long time, and it has had cultural implications. And when you see protests, uh, minings, uh, in the name of forest right acts, people, forest villages are being taken away. So these resistance, or the mode of resistance, are very much uh, at par, even like are very relevant in today's world as well. Yeah, I hope I answered your question. Dr.
Actually, that's interesting. We can take Mrilanani Raj's question, which talks about the relevance of this material today. And like you said, I mean, it's interesting to know that the form continues and the articulations continue even today. So she says, I'm Mrinalini Raj, PhD candidate at IIT Roorkee. I'm working on the Santhal tribe. Very thankful to you for all the information you've shared. Most of the work we have available and rely on has been over 50 years old. Would you say they lose relevance with the changes the tribe is undergoing? And we should also bring more recent works together on some platform. So talking about the relevance, I mean, in terms of researching, how do they access more recent works? How can one bring that together or bring that to the fore? Or if you have suggestions for them as well.
Let me, fifth, what did she say? She said 50 years, the only references are of 50 years old. I don't think so. Yeah, but basically you can look up references. You will have references which are less than 50 years old. New documents are being researched every day, and some documents, such as, like, say, Peter Stanley's book in itself, right? So, like Rahul Ranjan's book on Birsha Munda. So, like, these are new perspectives in which one can look at rebellion or an understanding of history and the political nature of it. You can see that many of the materials are not by indigenous people, or rather, scholars many a times look at or give priority to material published in English and not published in other languages. But I think, as a research scholar who is looking at any minority language, it would be necessary is of utmost importance that you look at, if you're researching Mundari, you better learn Munda. If you are working on Santal documents, please learn Santali, and so on and so forth. So, like, without that, the nuances of understanding any research, I think it's bound to be skewed, which has been happening, right? So, yeah. And please write to me if you have, even if I don't know, I can put in touch with you people who know.
So Rahi has been very generous to say that she's happy to share her email here, so you can write to her if you want more information. Adrija Mukherjee is asking something similar. So other than Peter Stanley's book, she wants to know, is it possible to share some books on this aspect and understanding about the colonial disposition with regard to the Santals?
Yeah, it is.
I think maybe that is something, Adrija, you can write to Rahi, and she can share more on any reference material, or people who'd like to expand their research further can take this conversation forward. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Adrija is also asking that the magnitude of songs, folklores, etc., are more in its oral form than written forms. So how would you suggest we archive and document indigenous cultural tradition in a fast-pacing world where popular culture is dominating the identity, language, and existence?
Go to the field. That is what I love doing too. So, one way of doing it, basically two ways, in fact. The one that I worked in regards to songs, I had actually tried to understand what is it that we have recorded in terms of recording. So the only places that had been recorded was as early as 1914, in fact, was recordings by the Linguistic Survey of India. And the later on, we found recordings by Deben Bhattacharya, by Arnold Bakke, who was given by the, phonograph preparing an ethnomusicology archive. That you'll also find it online, openly available in the Rish Library website. You will also find documents or songs recordings by ethnomusicologist Kalidas Gupta, Deben Bhattacharya, and also by, as we speak, we have music stations, radio stations in Odisha, Jharkhand, West Bengal, in Kolkata, in Baripada, in places such as what's it called? Yeah, in Dumka, in Ranchi. So we had made a list, a metadata of the repository that is there in their audio archive. Okay. Apart from that, going to people's places and documenting during festivities, during other times when they are singing, during their uh, marriage ceremony, or in the death ceremony, or birth ceremony, or while working in the fields. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot of effort, but it's wonderful. It's a joy to work with people who are still practicing this largely. And as we know, like it's mostly oral, but there are numerous books now, song books. So expressions is not necessarily in prose and poetry, but in songs as well. So you will find numerous songs in the documents that I had archived, because that's a form of expression that people are more comfortable with, right? So you will find songs in Horshambag as well. You will find songs in periodicals that has been archived, and you will also find folklores, books on folklores in English, in in Hindi, Bangla, Uriya, Ohomia, you'll find these as well. So yeah, you're most welcome to look at and do your own recordings as well if that's possible.
Vanshika, Saran, and Shreya Kanoi have similar questions with regard to access of archives within the community. So I'll read Vanshika's first and then Shreya's. Are these archives accessible to the communities they engage with? Or is the research on Indigenous communities in general something those communities can access or comment on? Shreya also asks similar question. Are these archives physically accessible to the rural Santal population? Do you think it's important that these archives are made accessible? And I think in the chat, they were also curious whether there's any vision for a physical space for the archive at a local level, if you are aware of.
Yeah. So thank you for keeping it up. I mean, I have sleepless nights thinking about this because, as you know, though we say digital India, but we know digital India is not yet truly 100% digital India. So we do have digital divide. And though it's wonderful to have digital archives, it is a shortcoming that many people are unable to access this because of this digital divide. Otherwise, we have free access in British Library website as well as the School of Cultural Texts and Records. If one physically comes down here, we are happy to share, spend time, and there are other archives as well, as I shared in the Grand South Asia website. You can look at other archival material such as North Indian classical music archive, film archives, Rabindranath Tagore's Veridorium archives. These are all present physically at Jadavpur University. So if you are in Kolkata, if anyone is coming down to Kolkata, you are most welcome to visit the space. As far as access to the community is concerned, it is also of grave concern. What we try to do is to take this to the people. Okay, so there are initiatives where you go to different places and say in a school or in a distant college where you go and present this material. Uh, so that is one of the way. But yeah, digital divide is true and we are living it. Uh, this can only be solved when this divide is, you know, minimized, I guess.
Uh,
Go ahead, Vishali.
yeah. Aditi Krishnakumar is again asking, why are we not working on a dictionary of Santali into Indian languages? I mean, in the current scenario, 21st century scenario, why we're not making a new dictionary?
Yes, let's, please. Well, jokes apart, Bangladesh, I know a couple of people from Bangladesh and Dhaka University, and their linguistic department, Bangladesh Linguistics Department, they are working on a dictionary, and the dictionary that we have of PO Boarding Collective. So they are not only digitizing it, they are they are typing the whole thing with regards to lexicon and pronunciation as well. Right. So and there are apps now where to learn Santali, to learn how to write Santali in different scripts. So you can look up apps, and it's not a very if you are insistent, you will be able to learn that. So there are numerous people who are working in numerous fields. Uh, yes, but that's a wonderful idea. I think we have dictionaries in Bangla to Santali, also from Uriya to Santali. I'm not sure about other languages. So yes, it's definitely should be worked upon.
We'll take one more question. There's one from Sangeeta Datta. They ask, I'm just curious if there is any research outputs where the recorded video and the text that you mentioned have been compared. And did you focus on any of this while doing under the EAP?
No, not that I know of. Yeah. What I have done is looked at songs in written form as well as which is sung, like one song particularly, like it is also again a whole song. Devanti Gunadivasi Bir Hor, Devanti Gunadivasi Bir. So it's a song which was written keeping the Santal rebellion in mind, as well as the Jharkhand movement, which started as early as 1930s and 40s. And I have heard stories and anecdotes where this was sung from on top of an elephant's back, and hundreds of people sung it together. So it gives me goosebumps. And how is it in its written form? So not the whole of the song is sung, and there are words which are changed while it is sung. So yeah, that's something that I had looked upon, but that's just one song. I'm sure, I mean, if you look at other songs, their renditions and look at how it is in the conscious of the people who are singing and what do they relate to. So yeah, it also interests me if the meaning of the song, how it say changes in several decades of time. So how is it relevant now? What did it mean when, say, a 70 years old person was a young child? So we do oral history interviews regarding this, and try to understand the lives of song, if I say. And yeah, it will be a fascinating thing for anyone to look up and
I was
work.
just going to say that for the audiences listening in or watching this presentation, it's an invitation for researchers, scholars to then access this material that's there, look at it in new ways and interpret it in new ways as well, and to make it and to write about it and make this research more accessible and available. Um, I know I said last question, but Shreya's asking another question,
Yeah.
asking if there are any archives or perhaps museums or spaces that exist on the Santali material culture. That is the ethnobotanical crafts, making traditions, textiles, etc. Sort of
This,
spaces that house that.
yeah. There's one in Oslo, uh, in Norway, and there's one in Vishnubati. It's a small village around 15 kilometers from Shantiniketan or Bolpur in West Bengal. And they have this initiative of trying to understand what is heritage and portraying it as they have a very interactive museum space as well, where they bring in artifacts such as the banam, the musical instrument, or the tirio, which is a flute, and do workshops as well. Right. So they do workshops on Banam. So Banam workshops. There are not many people who can actually build a Banam. So Banam is a string instrument. And they also have indigenous food festivals, and where they showcase our traditional food, and everyone is welcome there. They can taste it. So in terms of as far as craft is concerned, they also have mask making workshops. They also have bamboo mat making workshops, and yeah, so on and so forth. You get the idea. So yeah, so this is a living practice, and definitely these living practices will not be living if they are not lived. So these are initiatives which enable this to continue looking forward, engaging the community as well as people who are interested in. Yeah.
And
So there are tribal, regional tribal centers where this kind of initiative also is taking place. Though I am not very sure of where is happening, what is happening. So yeah, you can look those up, please.
yeah, I was just going to add that perhaps the state and the regional centers do
Mm,
provide some sort of platform
mm,
for the sharing and sharing of this material.
mm.
Right.
Like, as someone said, there's a remarkable tribal museum in Bhopal. Okay, that's the
Oh yes, of course.
yes.
Yeah, there's one in Arakud too, tribal
Okay,
museum. Yeah.
great.
Right.
It's a lovely engagement by the audience. So thank you so much for engaging with Rahi and this presentation. So over to Bishwadeep as well.
Thank you, Rahi. It has been a pleasure spending this evening with you. I mean, really, thank you for engaging us so deeply and sharing such a wonderful talk. And also, as Menaka said, thanks to everyone who participated both on Zoom and on our Facebook Live. This session has been rewarding thanks to your insightful questions. And it was really great to get so many good questions. And from all of us at IFA, a big thank you to the Indorama Charitable Trust for supporting the IFA archive from its very inception and continuing to do so. Do listen to the recently launched IFA Archive podcast, which is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, do follow IFA on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Finally, join us for our next IFA project showcase on Thursday, December 14, 2023, which is a presentation by Syed Sadiqi. And finally, thank you. Thank you once again, Rahi, and everyone who has participated. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahi.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.